Welcome back. Earlier we said we're going to be shedding some light over the government's efforts to qualify the youth for the market requirements in many ways. Of course, the story began with the presidential leadership boosting and empowering and enforcing youth, focusing on that particular target for over 7 years now through many channels, through the youth conferences, through the initiatives, through the presidential leadership programs, through many programs to evaluate them and train them also to be able to invade all the spheres and the mediums of practical life in the near future. And today we're going to be talking about that particular effort done by the government and how far have youth, Egyptian youth, reached, and African youth in general, reached after all these efforts that were exerted by every institution in the country. And we're very delighted to be having with us the Human Resources Consultant, Dr. Heba Hamza, and she's going to give us the insight. Good morning, Dr. Hamza. How are you doing? First of all, we need human resources definition. What is the definition of human resources? It might look as a slight definition, but it's very important in qualifying people.
Yeah, sure. Well, human resources, as you mentioned, it's very slight word, but you know it's starting with the human. So it's everything related with the human. Let's talk about preparing the human in his practical life, how to start even his career, how to prepare himself, and then after starting his career and deciding what to do and when and how to implement his work, how to apply his job, how to make use of his skills, and how to develop also his skills and his knowledge on the short term and on the long term. So human resources is related with everything related to the human, starting from his career till having solid experience and a lot of achievements. And you know, achievements are non-stop. So you have to achieve and you have to develop daily during your life. It's not related to age, it's not related to race and place or time or whatever. So human resources in brief is related to everything for the development of the human in general.
That's very right. And also qualifying people, or regardless of their age, their race, and where they come from, or even their education.
Yeah.
That's something great to say. Because some people say if they are over the age, it's too late to be qualified. Sometimes there are many jobs that they refuse people who are over 30, for example.
Yeah, sure.
Who are not well educated. People who come from a different race, or people who come from a low income bracket. These are some different types of obstacles, and at the same time some different types of discrimination, because sometimes those people are very qualified, overqualified.
Sure. Well, this is
so
very
what is
important.
the role of human resources now here to be able to push this sector of people in the cycle of development?
Well, it starts, this is a very important point, thank you, Dina. It starts from the way how do think. We have to work on the way people think, you know. The employers in general, they always look for people with young age and with low experience sometimes in some specific job, just not to pay more and more. They have to cut costs, maybe with the crisis that they face, maybe financial issues and so on. So they usually look for less experience sometimes, which is not correct. Sometimes they look for people with brackets related to age in specific. For example, they say we cannot hire people over 35 or over 40 or whatever. So this is come back to the culture. Let's concentrate on the culture of how do people think. We have to work from here. We have to work on, they have to change the way in thinking. They have to know the strengths in these people, that they are having more experience. Yeah, the points of strengths. They have to look for the experienced people in some specific jobs, of course, not on all levels, I mean, but for some experiences they need it. Otherwise, we will set people all after 30 years old, or after 30 years, 35 years old, they will sit at home. But this is not logic. If you look to the European society, you will never find this. So again, we have to work on the culture and on the way how people, their mentality, how it goes and how do they think. So this mainly is the problem. The way of thinking, the mentality, the culture, and the society.
So what are the means to boost our human resources? How can we enrich them by upgrade the skills of human resources? By maybe copying other successful experiences like you kindly just mentioned in the European communities and some other cultures, trying to spread awareness to be able to focus over the qualifications inside people regardless of their age, regardless of their background. How could we do this?
Well, actually, it starts from earlier age. I mean, in school, for example, if we look to the kindergarten stage, primary stage, and so on, prep and secondary, and so on. So it starts from there. So people, when you come to look now to the youth, to the educated people, to the graduated ones, to the ones working at work, this is the end of the cycle. But let's start from the very beginning, square one, which is the school. We have to build this early. Since school and since childhood, we have to build this in the people, I mean in the children, in their way of thinking. How do they think, how do they act, and how do they interact? How do they interrupt even the actions they face on daily basis in their social life, in their homes, with their families, and so on, with their mommies, and so on. So the way of thinking starts from the very beginning, which is childhood. You have to build this from scratch. The school also is having a very important role here, because you find the child stay at the school more than he stays at home, more than he stays and he talks with his mom and his dad. So at school, it's a very important stage. And then after school, we go into the college or universities. And this is the role also of the university. In parallel with whom? I'm not taking the focus on the school or on the college and that's it. But it's a parallel job together with the home, with the parents as well. It's a mutual cooperation between both of them in building their child mentality, in building his way of thinking, and the concepts he will grow up on. So this is the very start. From where do we have to start? I mean, then we go to the middle stage, which is university and college. You have to have like more training courses, more work on the enhancement of the skills and knowledge. And even when you look for the, for example, the private sector colleges and universities now, away from the governmental one, the governmental even one are doing now a lot of efforts and great efforts parallel with the private sector universities. They are equal also, I mean, almost they are going in parallel steps for the enhancement, for the development of the youth, to grow up their knowledge, to enhance their skills, and to have better quality of graduated youth.
Right. It's very important that you mentioned a very crucial point, which is enabling the early start of youth, which is at earlier ages in schools.
Yeah.
But also those kids, sometimes they are bullied, they are humiliated, they are frustrated by some teachers, by some people, even by some classmates. I mean, the concept of frustration. People sometimes let you down, they push you aside. When they see that you are a threat to their success. Some sick people think like that. Or there is a competition, they might like to push you aside or frustrate you or create obstacles. What is the role of human resources to teach people how to overcome frustration, or youngsters overcoming frustrations, humiliation, overcoming obstacles and challenges? That is also very important.
Yeah, sure, and it has a lot of impacts on kids in specific, because this is a very sensitive stage. They are affected with every single transaction they face. Well, you know, this is actually very important, and the government as well, maybe 6 years ago, as far as I believe, they started a huge training program for the teachers. And this was very great. We are currently starting to have the impact and the effect clearly on a lot of schools and level of teachers. We have to work hardly on the training of the teachers, because during the last maybe 30, 40 years ago, we didn't feel that focus or importance of the training of the teachers. And that's why we used to complain that the governmental schools are, or teachers, I mean, in working for the governmental schools, are not that on the same level of the private sector schools. Maybe we feel it during the last 30, 40 years ago, but now we feel a lot of differences. This comes because of the training and the huge efforts done working on their skills, on their knowledge, on their way of teaching. You know, there are a lot of courses now working on how to manage your class, how to manage your classroom, I mean. How to teach the techniques and the tactics of teaching. This is a science now. So this we lost during the last 30, 40 years, but now we got the importance of how to do it and why do we have to do it, and we started actually working on that. I believe within the coming 10, 20 years ago, later on, I mean, in the future, we will start feeling that and the impact and the conclusions and results coming from that efforts and from huge development for the teachers and the education in general.
Right. Let's talk about the different initiatives done to empower youth and enforce them by the government and the presidential leadership. There are many initiatives. I mean, ever since President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi have stepped into office, and every day you would wake up and be inspired by an outstanding initiative to enable youth to overcome obstacles, to be able to learn more, to express themselves, to be able to innovate. So if you would elaborate on these efforts.
Well, we felt, all of us, of course, the huge change in the way we think and the way how do we focus.
Revolutionary change.
Yeah, sure, huge changes. And thanks God, it's going on positively, as we all feel. We've noticed all of the conferences made for youth, especially prepared and arranged for the youth. We also noticed the concentration on how do we empower youth, how do we give them the chance that we lost years ago, even women in specific. We felt that greatly and obviously. During the last 6 years in specific, a lot of conferences were made, were prepared and arranged, organized especially for youth. The role of women and how do they were being involved even in the government, being we have ministers now and we have very positive figures we all know, and we notice their achievements as well. Even the training and the huge also number of universities that were open and installed and established, I mean, during the last 2 years in specific, were almost giving us impact. How do the government think? How do President Sisi is caring and giving full care? And he has a lot of ideas and positive plans for preparing the next generation. This was very effective, and we all feel it on ground.
That's true. But also, how do you assess the outcome of the youth programs to be able to achieve these goals? There are many youth programs that were spread all over the governorates and implementing the directives of the presidential leadership and the directives of also the major plan that was set to be able to empower and enforce youth.
Well, Dina, you know, these are all long-term plans. I will not be honest if I tell you now that we all noticed all of the outputs now. We started to feel it. We started to find out some of the results appearing on ground, but this will be more clear and clear within the coming 5 years at least. Because when we think, and as we know, the government, they are having long-term plans for the youth, and this is not short-term. We have a lot of short-term plans, of course, and from where we see a lot of figures now, they are holding and assigned for a lot of positions, key positions in the government, and they are all, maybe maximum, they are 30 years old, maybe less. So this is brand new for us. Long years ago, when we look at the hierarchy of the government, you find all of them maybe 50 and above. But now it's different. Now we are starting from the 20s. So I believe that this is a very positive step to empower youth and to have them in the participation process on building our country and enhancing the whole society towards a better life.
Let's talk about the process. If we pass the participation or the preparing youth to be able to participate in the future, let's talk about the process of preparing them for meeting the requirements of the market.
Yeah.
Meeting the market requirements is very strict and harsh. It doesn't know any emotions or any passions. So in order to be able to qualify a person to meet the requirements of the market, he needs to be able to be acquired all information, knowledge necessary to be able to prepare himself and also to train himself in many ways.
Yeah, sure.
So explain to us, how is that done?
Well, as you mentioned, the market is very tough and the competition is very high. So if we have people who think smartly, I mean youth, if we have them reaching the level of thinking smart, not working hard, no, they have to think smart and they have to work smart. So briefly, they have to work on specific areas. For example, let's talk about the skills, communication skills, negotiation skills, all whatever under the scope of the skills. He has to enhance his skills very well because this is very vital now. His even computer knowledge, computer now is nothing. If you don't have to work, or I mean if you can't work now or use the computer, so you will be totally ignored. So now we are starting this from the school and from the lowest level of education, as you know, giving the kids computer classes, and even the mobile and the technology, it's not stopping on daily basis. They have to work and they have to exert more efforts on the technologies, and they have to empower themselves by themselves. They have not only to wait for the school, not only to wait for the university, but they have to work by themselves hardly to be able to compete. The market is really aggressive and it's running and it's moving very fast. So skills, knowledge, and the most important point, which is the attitude.
Attitude?
Yeah.
In what way?
I mean the attitude and the behavior of the kid, of the youth, of the girl, of the boy, whoever now we are talking about. Attitude is very important because when you reach a certain level of education and age, attitude is the hardest point to be changed. So, for example, you mentioned 5 minutes ago, and you talked about the teachers and the attitude of the teachers. What you mentioned was attitude. It was not only failure in knowing...
you mean the culture?
A culture, yeah. The way he behaves. Okay? So, all of the examples you mentioned about the teachers and how do they annoy the kids in schools and they aside him away, this is poor attitude. I will not say bad, but it is poor. So we have to work not only on the skills and the knowledge, but also on the attitude.
But also, there must be some instructions to qualified people or the beginners for how to go through an interview. If I'm applying for a job or something and I need to meet the requirements, I'm not fully qualified or I'm desperate to earn the job. So I should be joining a program or something to qualify. I've heard about those programs. So if you would like to also give us some tips about for people who are beginners.
Yeah, well, going and conducting an interview is an easy job. It's not hard. I see, as you mentioned, people going to have like a course or to have a consultant to prepare him the CV or whatever. So it is simple as is. You just write down in your CV your actual experience, your real experience. Because a lot of people just try to exaggerate.
To give credibility.
Yeah,
right.
they have to exaggerate and they have to put more and more, working under pressure and having a lot of knowledge but when you meet him one-to-one, interview face-to-face, I mean, you find nothing.
Exactly.
So sometimes when I conduct interview, I ask the applicant, who wrote you down such a professional CV? So he said, yeah, it's my brother, or my maybe a business center
Right.
specialized for writing, and with full of spelling mistakes, grammatical mistakes, and so on.
Gives
So
a bad impression.
yeah, sure, it gives
Right.
bad impression. So
On that very thoughtful note, we're going to be ending it here. Dr.
Sure.
Heba Hamza, your human resources consultant. We're
Thank
very
you,
honored
Jean.
to have. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you, my
coming
pleasure.
over. You have a beautiful day.
Thank you, you too.
And I guess this would take us to a short break, and we'll come to continue the breakfast show, so stay with us.